Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, text number 34 onwards. Asavihanek guno agunodhvaraha prithagvid dravya guna kriyokti sampadate arthasya linga nama bhir vishuddha vijnana ghana swarupataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world. But although he is concentrated spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned souls, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals, and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interest and purposes of the performers. So Supreme Personality of God is a completely transcendental, not contaminated by this material world. But still he accepts our material offerings just for our purification, for the benefit of the conditioned soul. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need any of it. But he still accepts different types of sacrifices formed with various material elements, rituals, mantras, all material. Performer is material. But still he accepts it. That's his mercy, nothing else. For material prosperity, there are recommendations in the Vedas for various types of yajna, sacrifice. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that Lord Brahma created all living entities, including human beings and demigods, and advised them to perform yajna according to the material desires. Saha yajna praja srishtva. These performances are called yajnas because the ultimate goal is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The purpose of performing yajnas is to get material benefit, but because the aim is to simultaneously satisfy the Supreme Lord, such yajnas have been recommended in the Vedas. Such performances are of course known as karmakanda or material activities. And all material activities are certainly contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Generally, the karmakanda ritualistic ceremonies are performed in the mode of passion. Yet the conditioned souls, both human beings and demigods, are obliged to perform these yajnas, because without them one cannot be happy at all. So although they are material, the result is also material because mostly the yajnas are performed to get some material benefit. In the process, the Supreme Lord gets satisfied because he has asked. Like in Gita, it is said, or in the Vedas. Vedas are full of karmakanda procedures. It's asking the living entities to perform these yajnas. Because without these yajnas, one cannot be happy at all. So materially, if one wants to be happy and at the same time make some progress spiritually, it does the karmakanda yajnas. Now, if one wants to perform spiritual yajnas and please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the sacrifice is there. But not everybody goes for that. But one gets spiritual benefit, spiritual blissfulness, and material prosperity or happiness also by doing the spiritual yajna, which is a Sankirtan yajna. But the yajna has to be performed. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that these karmakanda ritualistic ceremonies, although contaminated, contain touches of devotional service because whenever there is the performance of any yajna, Lord Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important because even a little endeavor to please Lord Vishnu is bhakti and is of great value. A tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of the performances, which by devotional service gradually come to the transcendental position. Therefore, although such yajnas are superficially material activities, the results are transcendental. Such yajnas are Surya Yajna, Indra Yajna, Chandra Yajna, are performed in the names of demigods. But these demigods are bodily parts and parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods cannot accept sacrificial offerings for themselves, but they can accept them for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as a departmental tax collector of a government cannot collect taxes for his personal account, but can realize them for the government. Any yajna performed with this complete knowledge and understanding is described in Bhagavad Gita as Brahmarapanam, or a sacrifice offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that came in chapter 4. So when the yajna is performed with complete understanding, then it becomes a spiritual yajna. So understanding that Krishna is the enjoyer, actual enjoyer, sacrifices should be performed with this view in mind. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. See, so yajna could be the same, but depending upon the consciousness of the performer, everything becomes spiritual. Just like, now, temples are there, suppose ISKCON temple, and somebody goes to the temple and he stands in front of the Lord and asks the Lord for some material benefits, something, whatever, money, power, position, or whatever. He's gone to the temple and he's praying to the Lord, looking at the Lord, taking darshan of the Lord. And the devotee also goes to the temple and he's also gone to the temple, looking at the Lord, praying to the Lord to give him some devotion service, to engage me in a devotion service. Now both have performed some kind of sacrifice to come to that position, to be there and to ask for something. But the person who's asking for material things is materially motivated. And the person who's asking for devotion service, he is spiritually motivated. So the spiritually motivated, his thoughts are spiritual, his purpose is spiritual, his service also becomes spiritual. But the person who's asking for material benefits, his consciousness is material. So one becomes yajna and the other, one becomes bhakti and the other becomes pious activity. That's the only difference. So we, by our consciousness, what do we want? Then it becomes either spiritual or material activity. The performer of the sacrifices must always keep in view that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas are meant to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnur Aradhyate Pantha. Anything material or spiritual done for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is understood to be an actual yajna. And by performing such yajnas, one gets liberation from material bondage. The direct method of getting liberation from material bondage is devotion service, comprising the 9 following methods. So by performing yajna, the spiritual yajna, really the spiritually, then one gets liberated. The 9-fold process is given as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vadanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. This 9-fold process is described in this verse as Vishuddha Vijnana Ghana, or satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by transcendental knowledge concentrated on the form of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is the best method for satisfying the Supreme Lord. One who cannot take to this direct process, however, should take the indirect process of performing yagyas for the satisfaction of Vishnu or yagya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead's deep scientific knowledge is concentrated to the supreme point. For example, medical science knows some things superficially, but doctors do not know exactly how things happen in the body. Lord Krishna, however, knows everything in detail. Therefore, his knowledge is Vijnana Ghana. So, Ghan means concentrated knowledge because it does not have any of the defects of material science. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Vishuddha Vijnana Ghan, concentrated transcendental knowledge. Therefore, even though he accepts karma kandiya materialistic yagyas, he always remains in a transcendental position. Therefore, the mention of Anek Guna refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead's many transcendental qualities, for he is not affected by the material qualities. The different kinds of material paraphernalia or physical elements are also gradually transformed into spiritual understanding because ultimately there is no difference between material and spiritual qualities, for everything emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead or Supreme Spirit. So ultimately everything is transcendental. Even the material qualities, material world we see, it's coming from Krishna only. But how we use it, how we utilize it, that's how it becomes either material or spiritual. For example, here Prabhupada didn't give that example, but he has given someplace else. Just like we are using this computer or the mobile phone, the mobile phone or computer are material. But since they're being used in the service of Krishna, they become spiritualized. They are material, they become spiritual. Like Prabhupada has always given this example of iron rod. Iron rod, when it is put in fire, and if it's there long enough, then it looks like iron rod, but it becomes or it acts like just like fire. So same thing. Karma kandiya materialistic yagyas are there because the purpose is only material. But if the same yagya is done with the purpose of pleasure of the Supreme Lord, his satisfaction, then the same yagya becomes spiritual. One vivid example of this is Dhruv Maharaj, who took to meditation in the forest to achieve material benefit, but ultimately became spiritually advanced and did not want any benediction for material profit. He was simply satisfied with the association of the Supreme Lord. Ashaya means determination. Generally, a conditioned soul has a determination for material profit, but when these desires for material profit are satisfied through performance of yagya, one gradually achieves the spiritual platform. Then his life becomes perfect. So this is a purpose. So slowly one can make progress. प्रधान कालाश धर्म संग्रहे शरीर एष प्रतिपत्य चेतना क्रियाफलत्वेन विभुर्विभाव्यते यथा नलो दारुषु तद्गुणात्मकः. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is all-pervading, but he is also manifested in different types of bodies, which arise from a combination of material nature, time, desires, and occupational duties. Those different types of consciousness develop just as fire, which is always basically the same, blazes in different ways according to the shape and dimension of the firewood. The Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly lives with the individual soul as Paramatma. The individual soul has awareness in accordance with this material body, which he attains by the virtue of Prakriti or material nature. The material ingredients are activated by the force of time, and thus the three material modes of nature are manifested. According to his association with the three modes of nature, the living entity develops a particular type of body. In animal life, the material mode of ignorance is so prominent that there is a very little chance of realizing the Paramatma, who is also present within the heart of the animal. But in the human form of life, because of developed consciousness, Chetanam, one can be transferred from ignorance and passion to goodness by the results of his activities. Kriya Phalatvena. A human being is therefore advised to associate with spiritually advanced personalities. The Vedas give the direction Tadvijnanartham sa gurum eva abhigachet. In order to reach the perfection of life, or to understand the real constitutional position of the living entity, one must approach the spiritual master. It is not optional, it is imperative that one approach the spiritual master, for by such association one proportionately develops his consciousness towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The highest perfection of such consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. According to the body given by Prakriti or nature, one's consciousness is present. According to the development of consciousness, one's activities are performed. And according to the purity of such activities, one realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present in everyone's heart. The example given herein is very appropriate. Fire is always the same, but according to the size of the fuel or burning wood, the fire appears to be straight, curved, small, big, etc. So here, fire is given the example that according to the size of the wood or the shape of the wood, the fire will appear like that. So similarly, consciousness is the same, but depending upon the kind of body the soul got. Of course, that depends upon the consciousness he developed in the previous lifetime. But now if the consciousness is of the animal, he got the body of the animal, then he acts like an animal. So similarly, consciousness, now like Prabhupada says, now in the body of an animal, suppose he's got a body of a dog. Although the Paramatma is sitting next to the soul, but dog cannot understand. That soul cannot understand, cannot realize it. Only in human form of life. Even in human form of life, if the mode of ignorance and passion are very prominent, still he cannot realize Paramatma. Only when he comes to the level of goodness or doing some bhakti, he can understand Paramatma is there. And then if it goes further, so more one advances in consciousness, then we can feel like that. The more fire will burn, or more he realizes he's closer to God. According to the development of consciousness, God realization is present. In the human form of life, it is recommended, therefore, that one undergo the different types of penances and austerities described in Bhagavad Gita. Like a staircase, yoga has different steps for reaching the topmost floor. And according to one's position upon the staircase, he is understood to be situated in Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. Of course, Bhakti Yoga is the topmost step on the staircase of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, according to one's development in consciousness, one realizes his supreme identity. And thus, when one's existential position is purified fully, he becomes situated in Brahmananda, which is ultimately unlimited. Therefore, the Sankirtan movement contributed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Lord Chaitanya is a direct and easiest process for coming to the purest form of consciousness, Krishna consciousness, the platform on which the Supreme Personality is fully realized. Directions for performing different types of yagyas are specifically arranged for the highest realization of the Supreme Lord, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita by the Lord Himself. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized according to the proportion of one's surrender. Full surrender, however, occurs when a man is perfectly in knowledge. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanvan mam prapadyate. So, according to the development of consciousness, his realization increases, his surrender increases. The more his surrender, more his realization increases. More his closeness with the Lord increase. So it's all a game of consciousness. And the consciousness is developed by our what kind of association we are keeping, what kind of sadhana we are doing. It all consciousness will depend upon that. Aho mamami vitarani anugriham harim gurum yagya bhujam adishwaram daswadharma yogena yajanti mamaka nirantaram shoni tale dridvrtaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a master and enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, and He is a supreme spiritual master as well. All of you citizens on the surface of the globe who have a relationship with me and are worshipping Him by dint of your occupational duties are bestowing your mercy upon me. Therefore, O my citizens, I thank you. Oh. That is a quality of Maharaj Prithu. He is thanking everybody for performing devotion service. Of course, as a leader, as a king, he will get affected by their pious activity or by their bhakti. He will get 1/6 of their karmas. But it is for the benefit of the citizens themselves. And Maharaj Prithu being so humble, such a Vaishnava, he is saying thanks to them. He's being grateful to them for performing the yajna. Maharaj Prithu advised to his citizens to take to devotional service is now concluded in 2 ways. He has repeatedly advised persons who are neophytes to engage themselves in devotional service according to the capacities of the different orders of social and spiritual life. But here he specifically thanks those already engaged in such devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is actually the enjoyer of all sacrificial ceremonies and who is also the supreme teacher as Antaryami or Paramatma. There is specific mention of the word Gurum, which indicates the Supreme Personality as Chaitya-Guru. Chaitya-Guru means the inside Guru. The Supreme Godhead in His Paramatma feature is present in everyone's heart, and He is always trying to induce the individual soul to surrender unto Him and to engage in devotional service. Therefore, He is the original spiritual master. He manifests Himself as spiritual master both internally and externally to help the conditioned soul both ways. Therefore, He has been mentioned herein as Gurum. It appears, however, that in the time of Maharaj Prithu, all the people on the surface of the globe were His subjects. Most of them, in fact, almost all of them were engaged in devotional service. Therefore, He thanked them in a humble way for engaging in devotional service and thus bestowing their mercy upon Him. In other words, in a state where the citizens and the head of the state are engaged in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they help one another and are mutually benefited. So they help one another and are mutually benefited. So both the head of the state and the citizens. So that's a real kingdom, or we can say that's a real Ram Rajya actually, where everybody is just engaged in devotional service. Of course, they do their occupational duties, no doubt about it, and that's what we studied previously. But the king is thanking them for performing devotional service. Ma jatu teja prabhaven mahar dibhi dibhi stitikshya tapsa vidyaya cha dedipyam aneyajit devatanam kule swayam rajkula dvijanam. The Brahmins and Vaishnavas are personally glorified by their characteristic powers of tolerance, penance, knowledge, and education. By dint of all their spiritual assets, Vaishnavas are more powerful than royalty. It is therefore advised that the princely order not exhibit its material prowess before these two communities and should avoid offending them. Prithu Maharaj has explained in the previous verse the importance of devotional service for both the rulers and the citizens of the state. Now he explains how can one be steadily fixed in devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while instructed Srila Rupa Goswami, has composed a devotion service has compared the devotion service of the Lord with a creeper. A creeper has a feeble stem and requires the support of another tree to grow. And while growing, it requires sufficient protection so that it may not be lost. While describing the system of protection for the creeper of devotion service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has especially stressed protection from offenses unto the lotus feet of Vaishnavas. Such offenses are called Vaishnava Aparad. Aparad means offense. If one commits Vaishnava Aparad, all of his progress in devotion service will be checked. It doesn't say may be checked, it says will be checked. Even though one is very much advanced in devotion service, if he commits offenses at the feet of a Vaishnava, his advancement is all spoiled. In the Shastra, it is found that a very great yogi, Durvasa Muni, committed a Vaishnava aparad and thus for 1 full year had to travel all over the universe, even to Vaikuntha Loka, to defend himself from the offense. At last, even when he approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vaikuntha, he was refused protection. Therefore, one should be very careful about committing offenses at the feet of a Vaishnava. The most grieving type of Vaishnava aparad is called Guru aparad, which refers to offenses at the lotus feet of the spiritual master. In the chanting of the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this Guru aparad is considered the most grievous offense. Among the 10 offenses committed against the chanting of the holy name, the first offenses are disobedience to the spiritual master and the blasphemy of the Vedic literature. So Guru Aparad, so that's what Prithu Maharaj is also saying in the shloka, that Brahmins and Vaishnavas are most powerful. And by dint of the spiritual assets, Vaishnavas are more powerful even than the royalty. So the princely order should not commit offenses against them. That's the power of even Vaishnavas. Even this is what we saw in Prithu Maharaj's father's case, Vena, the Brahmins. They cursed him and killed him. They were so powerful. And the Vaishnava is who? The simple definition of Vaishnava is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A person who immediately reminds one of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is a Vaishnava. Of course, Mahaprabhu gave different definitions. Actually, there was a family or a group of Vaishnavas who would come, Kulingram. Yeah, they were from Kulingram, and they would come every year to Jagannath Puri to attend Rath Yatra and to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one year they asked Mahaprabhu, who's a Vaishnava? I'm forgetting it, because 3 years they asked and Mahaprabhu gave different answers every year. So one was for Kanishta Adhikari, one was for Madhyama, one was for Uttam Adhikari. So one of the answers, I'll try to find out tomorrow exactly what he said all 3 years. So one of the answers was, if just by seeing a Vaishnava, a person, if one is reminded of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that person is a Vaishnava. In this verse, both Vaishnavas and Brahmins are mentioned. A Vaishnava is a learned Brahman, and is therefore designated as a Brahman Vaishnava, Brahman Pandit, or as a Vaishnava and a Brahman. In other words, a Vaishnava is supposed to be Brahman already, but a Brahman may not be a pure Vaishnava. When a person understands his pure identity, Brahman Janati, he immediately becomes a Brahman. Means he's a Brahman knows I'm not this body, I'm a soul. When a Brahman, however, rises to the platform of personal understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is transcendental even to a Brahman. In the material conception, the position of a Brahman is the highest in human society, but a Vaishnava is transcendental even to the Brahman. Both the Brahmins and Vaishnavas are spiritually advanced. Brahmins' qualifications are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita as truthfulness, mental equanimity, control of the senses, power of tolerance, simplicity, knowledge of the absolute truth, firm faith in the scriptures, and practical application of the Brahminical qualities in life. In addition to all these qualifications, when one fully engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he becomes a Vaishnava. Prithu Maharaj warns his citizens who are actually engaged in the devotion service of the Lord to take care against offenses to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Offenses at the lotus feet are so destructive that even the descendants of Yadu, who were born in the family of Lord Krishna, were destroyed due to offenses at the feet. So this we studied earlier, how the Yadu dynasty was destroyed, completely vanquished, because they committed offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot tolerate any offense at the lotus feet of Brahmins and the Vaishnavas. Sometimes, due to their powerful positions, princes or government servants neglect the position of Brahmins and Vaishnavas, not knowing that because of their offense, they will be ruined. So it happens. It happens all the time. Because the Vaishnavas or Brahmins are supposed to be very simple. They live simply and they speak simply. So sometimes people in mode of passion or ignorance also, but mostly passionate people, they misunderstand the position of Brahmins or Vaishnavas or sadhus. Then they end up committing offense, and this leads to their own ruination actually. But at the same time, Vaishnavas are very merciful. Vaishnavas are merciful, but not the Lord. When somebody commits offense against a Vaishnava, the Lord is the one who takes, who gives a punishment. But anyway, I'll try to find out more about the three answers that Mahaprabhu gave. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll stop here. You all have a wonderful and safe day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare
Jai Shri
Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Jai
sir.
Shri Prabhupada. Thank you.